Republicans tonight succeeded in their second attempt to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
They blame him for the record number of border crossings. NBC's Alice Barr has the latest from Capitol Hill.
For the first time in nearly 150 years, the House has voted to impeach a sitting cabinet member, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
On this vote, the yeas are 214 and the nays are 213. The resolution is adopted.
House Republicans claiming victory by a razor-thin margin on their second try to impeach the secretary.
We're happy to get the job done.
They blame him for the record number of crossings at the U.S. southern border. The effort is destined to die in the Democrat-controlled Senate, where early this morning a bipartisan majority passed a $95 billion aid package for U.S. allies. President Biden making the urgent case for the House to take up the measure.
I don't pass this bill immediately. To stand for decency, stand for democracy.
The bulk of the money goes to Ukraine, along with Israel, humanitarian assistance for Gaza and elsewhere, and U.S. partners countering China.
History is looking upon the United States and seeing if we will stand up for our values, stand up to bullies like Putin, and do the right thing.
House Speaker Mike Johnson reaffirming that the House will not consider national security legislation without new border policy.
National security begins with border security. We have said that all along.
Despite having declared a previous version of the bill with border money dead on arrival, the Speaker saying it didn't go far enough. Republicans are under pressure from former President Trump to reject the new Senate foreign aid package. High drama in the House as Congress struggles to break through gridlock on several fronts.
President Biden today also called out as shameful and un-American former President Trump's recent comments that he would encourage Russia to do whatever it wants against NATO allies that don't keep up with their defense spending. From Capitol Hill, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Our Northland Representatives Pete Stauber and Tom Tiffany both voted in favor of impeaching Mayorkas. In a statement tonight, Congressman Stauber said Mayorkas lost the trust of the American people and now must lose his position of power within the administration.